Training camp starts next week, which means roster spots are on the line. Who will be the 53 men who make the Panthers roster when it's all said and done? I'll tell you right here on Locked On Panthers.
You are Locked On Panthers, your daily Carolina Panthers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into another edition of the Locked On Panthers podcast, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, as always, Julian Council, talking Carolina Panthers with you every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and yes, of course, Friday. Your team every day. That's our motto here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Thanks for watching the show right here on YouTube and listening wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. Be sure to hit me up over on Twitter at Julian Council or over on Blue Sky, also at Julian Council, where right now, no, I'm not answering your mailbag questions, but you can always send me in questions via my DMs on Twitter at Julian Council, just at me over on Blue Sky, also at Julian Council throughout training camp, as I am so excited, y'all. Monday, the rookies report. Tuesday, the vets are there. Then next Wednesday morning, day one of training camp, going to be down there, boots on the ground, excited to finally be one step closer to the 2025 season being here, and a lot of reasons to be excited about what this team could be after looking at the roster building this offseason. Last offseason, feels like Carolina has a chance to truly be competitive in the division and possibly in the NFC as far as a wild card spots go. I'm not going to say the P word and say they're going there, but we'll have to see how things play out. Important beginning of the season stretch with 3 or 4 on the road, but very excited to see how things play out over the next couple of weeks as guys are fighting to be a part of the 53-man roster. And before we get into this, I'm going to give you my roster projections, as on August 26th, that will be roster cut down day. We'll talk about that once we get there. I'll give you my projection prior to then, but it's my first projection. Maybe I'll do one in the middle of training camp, potentially based off of what I've seen so far. But understand this. Yes, 53 guys will make the initial roster. Just because you make it then does not mean you'll be sticking around for week one, because after that, as we saw last year, waiver claims are placed. Now, Carolina does not have the top waiver priority, so they're not going to get 6 guys off of waivers. And look at those 6 guys. Only 2 of them, John Radigan and Shamar Bartholomew, even stuck around. And of all of those 2, only John Radigan played really any impact on the roster last season because he was a special teamer, and Bartholomew did not play until week 18 once Caleb Evans got injured in a game where J.C. Horn didn't play. So it took 2 guys getting hurt in front of him for him to play. So it's possible they take somebody, and if that happens, they'll have to cut somebody. So the roster is never officially set. It's fluid, and understand all of that. But there are 16 guys who make the practice squad, and guys who I do not mention today, not make the roster, will have an opportunity to re-sign here in Carolina and be a part of the practice squad, which really is a part of an NFL roster because you can be elevated a couple of times a year, which brings me to the offense and starting off with the quarterbacks, how many quarterbacks Carolina is going to keep. You should know by now how I feel about the emergency third quarterback rule. I think it's great in theory, but if you get to that spot, much like the game that precipitated the rule, you are screwed. And probably more words you could use that are more colorful that we are not going to use on this show, and also not allowed to use on this show. So if Jack Plummer, who last year was awful against New England, was a little bit better against the Jets, and then, okay, I'm seeing a development there against Buffalo, and he got the opportunity the last 2 weeks of the season to be on the active roster. If Jack Plummer were to make the team this year, or last year had Andy and Bryce gone down, that would be a bad situation for Carolina. I don't know how much has really changed since the end of the year back in January to now heading to training camp for Jack Plummer to be someone who's going to make the team. But for me, I just think it's a waste of a roster spot. It's not like he plays special teams. You don't want to see him play. It's nice in theory to have, but I think initially they're going to hold off on that. And if they do need to bring him up, elevate him a couple times, then they'll sign him to the active roster. But for now, it makes sense to keep 2. And those 2 are obviously Bryce Young, QB1 for the 3rd year in a row, and then Andy Dalton, QB2 for the 3rd year in a row, just re-signed this offseason. And if his agent is any good, he has it on his contract that he's going to be starting week 3 this upcoming season in Carolina. So keeping 2 quarterbacks this season. Running backs, this is where a decision had to be made. I'm only going to keep 3. Chuba Hubbard, Rico Dowdle and Trevor Etienne, the 4th-round pick from the University of Georgia. Raheem Blackshear not making the team. I've gone over this a couple of times this offseason leading up to training camp. Blackshear was not great returning kicks last year. Doesn't mean he can't bounce back and win that job during training camp, but you look at the numbers. I just think that when you bring in Trevor Etienne, another receiver who we'll talk about a little bit later, that is signaling to you that you do not want to keep Raheem Blackshear around for another year. And he was a restricted free agent. They did not offer him a tender, but they did bring him back on a free agent deal that was outside of that for a nice team-friendly price. So Chuba, Rico, those are your top 2 guys. Trevor will be more of a 3rd down back, but a guy who I think will be helping to return kickoffs this upcoming season. So keeping 3 running backs Carolina is going to do. Wide receiver, as you know, by this point, if you've been watching and listening to all these shows, I'm really excited about what this group is going to look like this upcoming season, the potential. Now, a lot of it's a projection. That is very true, and that's a valid statement to put out there. But you can sit here and see how there are more quality options, even though that's potential quality options, than there have been in recent years. And that should have everybody, especially looking at the youth, excited about the future could be if the quarterback, that being Bryce Young, continues on the trajectory that he was on in the second half of the season last year. Dave Canales came out and said that it's going to be tough to figure out those numbers there with the wide receivers, and that the preseason will matter, that special teams will matter, and they love the guys that they have. They kept 7 last year, ended up only having 2. I think they keep 7 this year, and we'll see how it shakes out down the line. But I think Adam Thielen, clearly on the roster, provided injury of all these guys, of course, knock on wood. Xavier Legette on the roster, Tedero McMillan, 8th overall pick from Arizona on the roster, Jalen Coker back on the roster with no fear of being cut this time. David Moore, I got him on the roster. Hunter Renfrow, I'm going to project that he's close enough to the Hunter Renfrow he was before to be on the team. And then the last one, Jimmy Horn Jr., who missed a lot of the offseason portion with OTAs, mandatory minicamp because of a hamstring. His key to the roster is going to be returning kicks. And if I'm not keeping Blackshear and I'm keeping Etienne instead, I'm going to keep Jimmy Horn Jr. as well as a guy who can return kickoffs, potentially be a punt returner for Carolina. He is the 7th wide receiver to make the team. Apparently, Dan Morgan has a lot of conviction about him, and that dates all the way back to the Shrine Bowl back in January. So with that being the case, he is going to be the 7th and final guy to make the wide receiver spot. Tight end, I got 3. Tommy Tremble, and this is one where we'll find out once we get to training camp next week. Once they have the Veteran Day, when they report on Tuesday, Dave Canales speak to the media, Dan Morgan speak to the media. We'll get injury updates and understanding what is going to happen with Tommy Tremble, with guys like Derek Brown, Amari Barnett, like what their plans are for the injured players and where they are in their recovery, and if they can go right the next down Wednesday and be full go. So we'll see how that plays out. But Tommy Tremble right now, keeping him up there, and they would have to keep him on, then put him on PUP for him to be on the roster and not to be out for the season. Then JT Sanders back, lean and mean, still green, but ready to go. I'm excited about what he can do this season. And then Mitchell Evans, the 5th round pick out of Notre Dame, he rounds up that 3-man tight end room. Would not be surprised that they want to keep a 4th, but I think right now keeping 3. Offensive line. This one is the easiest outside of quarterback for me. You got 9 guys. Ike Ekwonu at left tackle, Damon Lewis at left guard, Austin Corbett or Cade Mays there at center, Robert Hunt at right guard, Taylor Moton at right tackle, Brady Christensen back as a backup tackle, your 6th offensive lineman. You got Josh Nyman back there, and then Chandler Zavala, who really took a step forward last year. He's back as a backup at that guard spot. So counting it, 2 quarterbacks, 3 running backs, 7 wide receivers, 3 tight ends, 9 offensive linemen. It's 24 players who I think will initially make the roster offensively here in Carolina. Doing the math, that means there's 3 guys on special teams and then 26 on defense. Who will the 26 be? I'll tell you right here, just a moment on Locked On Panthers. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So you stop just managing your money and you start building wealth. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNFL for half off your first year. At the 26 men who I believe on this defense will initially make the roster, one area that Carolina had to fix was the defensive line this past offseason. Much like last offseason ahead of the 2024 season, they needed to go out there and spend money on the offensive line. They did that by bringing in Robert Hunt and Damian Lewis. That completely changed that offensive line last season. And my hope, and I'm sure your hope is, and Panthers' hope certainly, is that the additions that they made this offseason will do the same and have the same kind of impact as Bobby Brown III and Turk Wharton come over from Los Angeles and Kansas City, respectively. I got 6 guys making it here on the defensive line. I could see 7, but I got 6. Derek Brown, of course, he's back. We'll find out next week what his workload will be as far as how they manage him heading into the season once training camp gets going. A'Shawn Robinson got him back for a second season in Carolina. He was the only bright spot on that defensive line last year. That was just brutal to watch most of the season. Bobby Brown III, big free agent addition. He, of course, came on the roster. Turk Wharton, the element that he brings as an interior pass rusher, he's going to make the team. And it comes down to a couple guys who are going to be battling for that final roster spot. Shy Tuttle, I got him on here because they already did the whole rework deal and the pay cut, and he is a vet. And, of course, the veteran thing comes into this, but I don't really think that at this point in time, it's that beneficial for Carolina to let him go because of that, because I do think they lose some money salary cap wise. So keep Shy Tuttle on the roster. You agree to terms with him to keep him around. It's not, I don't know if it's fair, but it just only seems right if you have those negotiations. If the player shows you enough during training camp, you already see what he can do, and you add other guys to the roster that he would make it. I certainly think he provides more value than someone like LeBron Ray. And I also think he provides more value than someone like Jaden Crumedy, who I do not have making the team. I have Cam Jackson instead, the 5th rounder out of Florida, making the team here this upcoming season. Really good run stopper last season. That's something that Carolina, or last season in Florida, but something that Carolina really needs to have here. Crumedy missed a lot of time last year. LeBron Ray really was not good for them last year. I think that he's somebody who they go with instead. It's possible they go with 7, that Crumedy makes it. But I do think that those will be the 6 guys, at least right now, who initially make the roster at the defensive line. Edge rusher. Looking at the numbers and going over the offense and the defense, I struggled with this one because it's one guy you just don't really see it with, but you got to understand that Ejiro Evero's still the DC. So you probably know where I'm going with this one. DJ Woonem, he's on the team. No doubt about that. Patrick Jones II just signed a free agency deal. He's on the team. Nick Scorton, he's also on the roster. And then Princely Umanmielen, he is also going to be there. Those 2 rookies drafted on day 2 back in April. The 5th guy, I'm going with DJ Johnson. DJ Johnson has not shown a ton as far as a pass rusher. We knew from the beginning that he was going to be a project developmental guy. And we've also known from the beginning that Ejiro Evero, the Panthers' embattled defensive coordinator, was a big fan of DJ Johnson, really wanted him to be on the team. And you look at the guys that they have, like one of them, not necessarily somebody you're asking to stop the run. Pat Jones, you will. Nick Scorton, you will. Umanmielen, not really asking right now. So there is value there for DJ Johnson as a run stopper, guy who can set the edge for Carolina. Looking at things right now, if Amari Barno is healthy enough, maybe he can come in and take his job, as he's been a guy who's played special teams before, and we really have not got to see what he truly can do because he's missed last season, wasn't really a top guy early on in his career. So I'm going with 5. Don't feel great about it, but I'm going with 5 as far as the edge rusher group goes right now. Linebacker, found this one to be fairly straightforward as well when you look at them and the offensive line. Trevor Wallace back for a second year. He'll be back there as a starter. Josie Jewell back as a starter his second year, coming in over from Denver, played in this defense back in that one season where Jerry Rivera was the DC under Nathaniel Hackett. Christian Roseboom, just signed him to a 1-year deal coming over from Los Angeles. So he'll be on the roster. And then two guys who I look at as just being special teams guys. You need guys who can play special teams, and that's why Claude Sherlis and John Radigan are both on the roster. Got to think back to that. Radigan knows a lot of these guys on the staff from his time in Seattle. So he's back again last year, played a lot special teams wise after being picked up on waivers. Then you have Claude Sherlis who had to step in and play at linebacker a couple times, made 2 starts. Wasn't the greatest at that spot, but they have Roseboom now, have a little bit more cover than they had a year ago. And, at least he has experience playing, but he was primarily the year prior a special teamer. And even last year when other guys were healthy, that's what his role was. So I think those two fill out your linebacker room with 5. Corner, there's a lot of people who want to see another corner added. Maybe it happens. Stephon Gilmore, somebody who's still out there. I don't know why I just said that, but there we go. Just shot myself in the foot. So go ahead. Feel free to ask, I guess. But I think when they signed J.C. Horn to a $100 million contract, and then they signed Mike Jackson later that day to a 2-year deal, they made it fairly clear that those are the 2 guys that they wanted to start. And then when you saw Jair Alexander go to Baltimore, and then you saw Jalen Ramsey get traded to Pittsburgh, it's like, oh, well, yeah, didn't look like Carolina was in on that deal. And the guy who said he'd be in on every deal is not in on any deals because he's not working here in Carolina as general manager anymore. Shout out to Scott Bitter. But I got 5 corners. Got JC. Got Mike. Shaw Smith-Wade set to start there at that nickel position this upcoming season. And then 2 guys I mentioned as 2 guys that this staff clearly has been fond of, Caleb Evans and Shamar Bartholomew. Those are the other guys to round it out. There are questions certainly about whether Mike Jackson can perform the way he performed last year again as a number 2 corner when that's not what he was doing in Seattle. The question about Shaw Smith-Wade, first time really being a full-time starter in the NFL. How's that going to work out? Caleb Evans, Shamar Bartholomew. Can you trust those guys as backups at outside corner? Plenty of questions in that room. JC, can he stay healthy? Valid questions heading to the season, but those are the 5 guys I think will prove themselves, at least the last 2, worthy of being on the roster initially. Safety. This one's tricky because, again, I think they're going to address this position if they have not already. But Trevon Merrick comes over, 3-year, $51 million deal. He's on the roster. Damani Richardson going to be on the team again this year. Lathan Ransom just dropped him in the 4th round of Ohio State. They did not do that to cut him. And then, the Nick Scott thing, I guess. I'm looking around. There's an opportunity maybe for one of the UDFAs, to find a way. But, he knows the scheme. This is an Ajero guy. Probably why he's back. He has an understanding. I would imagine that it's more of a special teams kind of role he's going to be playing and not truly playing safety. And, there is a value in a guy who can play special teams for you primarily, but also has experience as a starting safety in this league, which he's done the last couple of seasons. Not well, but he's done. And, of course, knows the scheme. So I got him on the roster right now. We'll see how this plays out because there's the whole vested veteran thing and guaranteeing his contract. He's on the roster come week 1. I got him on right now. And then the 5th is player to be named later. I think they'll have 5 safeties, and I don't think we know the name of who that 5th safety will be, who's going to come in at some point in time here during training camp in the preseason. So 5 safeties, 5 corners, 5 linebackers, 5 edge rushers, and 6 defensive linemen. That equals out to 26 guys on the defense, which means there's 3 left on special teams. We know 2 of them. Who's the other? Who's going to win the controversy here in Carolina? We'll talk about that here in just a moment on Locked On Panthers. 50 spots have been accounted for on this initial 53-man roster projection heading into training camp next week. 24 on offense, 26 on defense, and that means there's 3 spots left on special teams. We already know 2 of the 3 heading into it. There's no competition at 2 of these spots. J.J. Jansen is back here in Carolina once again, and just can we marvel at what this man has been able to do? 17th season. He's been with the Panthers since 2009. The only guy who's actually on the roster who remembers when the Panthers were winning games, remembers what it was like to win games at a high level. He broke John Case's record back in December 2022. His mark of 260 games played is 41st all-time in league history, and he could get to 27th all-time if he plays in every game this season to get to 277. Why not 280? Why not 281 if necessary for J.J. Jansen this upcoming year in Carolina? So he's back once again. And let's not forget, a couple of years ago, Matt Rule called a guy who's coming from Alabama, who was the long snapper of the year in college football, whatever that's worth, and said, "Hey, you coming?" And this man was like, "Oh, I'm not sure. I got to see what other teams want to do." He's like, no, we're drafting you. Matt Rule called somebody who did not think he was going to get drafted. And granted, it's late in the process. It's late 6th round. And he wanted him to replace J.J. Jansen. And J.J. Jansen beat him out. And then they put the guy in IR for the season, brought him back the next season. And J.J. Jansen beat him out. Matt Rule's legacy will be many things. For me, it will be trying to replace J.J. Jansen, which is unforgivable. And why J.J. won and Matt's out there in Lincoln making some ridiculous photo shoots. God bless him. So JJ's back another year. Sam Martin, he replaces Johnny Hekker. The Panthers getting a little bit younger at that punter position by 19 days as Johnny's no longer here. Sam was with the Bills last year. Okay, punter, I would think that next year they're probably going to try to get younger, like they potentially could be doing at kicker this season, even though not like Eddie Pinheiro is old, but young as in like getting a rookie. So I think that's something that gets figured out next season. But as far as the last spot at kicker, who's going to be the kicker in Carolina this season, I'm going to go with Ryan Fitzgerald. Matthew Wright's bounced around the league, and for some guys, it takes just one team to catch on. And then you're good, you're in the league forever, and you turn out to be a really good player. I just think with the kicker spot, if you're bouncing around so much, maybe you just don't have it completely there to be a reliable piece. And look, going for rookie, it can have its ups and downs. We've seen guys come in and be really good. And then we've seen guys really struggle. Like Jake Elliott was great for Philadelphia. He struggled recently. Simon McPherson was really great. He struggled, and Cade York had his struggles. Like, those are guys who are good kickers, solid legs. It just takes some time. And for a Panthers team that you don't want to be losing games because of your kicker, but at this stage, it's like you kind of can afford to, because it's not like you are contending for the Lombardi. And I don't want to discount what the experience of going to the playoffs would mean for this group and for this town and for this fan base. Like, it would be huge. But I don't think this is one of those years where it's like, okay, if you take a kicker who could be a little questionable, that's one of the things where you're looking at and being like, what the hell are you doing? Because I still think that there are plenty of questions, and there are certainly holes on the roster that will show themselves throughout the season, to where go with the big leg, go with the young guy, and go with Ryan Fitzgerald. I think that he will be the one who ends up winning the kicker competition, which will play out during training camp in the preseason, and will certainly be among one of the more fascinating things to really check out over the next couple of weeks. Just looking at the overall roster here, as far as who I think is going to make it, like quarterback, that will be one where I'm really curious to see like what they do with Jack Plummer, and if they do decide to only go with 2, I think that's the right decision. Running back, of course, Raheem Blackshear, just a whole competition there. Like, I don't think Etienne's not going to make the team. So Raheem, like, that's the guy I'm looking at. Wide receiver, do they want to keep 7? Does it make more sense to keep 6? That's a big one. Tight end, I could think that James Mitchell would be somebody who really could have a shot, just depending on how the roster numbers work out. Offensive line, will there be any kind of surprises like a Josh Nyman not making it, especially with Brady being here and being able to play both spots, even though he only played left and in center last year, and they had Yash play right when Taylor was out. And defensive line, they have options. Absolutely. Like Jaden Crumedy kind of had a red shirt last year with the ankle injury, and then coming in late last season. Has he done enough? Will he have developed enough for them to want him, or do they draft ahead of him with Cam Jackson? And does Shai truly stick around? Do they go with a guy like Jared Harrison Hunt? That's something. And like the DJ Johnson at all, I get it. I'm sure plenty of you were like yelling, maybe wrecking your car. Hopefully not when you heard me say that, but like Jared's still here. And they suck against the run. They should be better against the run, but that's an area where I'm not going to say he excels, but he can help you. So there's that. Linebacker, not much questions there for me. Corner, do they add somebody? Safety, certainly. They look like they need to add somebody if they have not already done so. So very excited to finally be back. Coming up next week, Monday, got a lot planned for y'all throughout the week. So Monday, I'm going to be talking about the storylines track as far as the rookies as a report. Tuesday, hoping to link up with one of my buddies here on the Carolina Panthers beat to preview all of training camp, and then we'll have reactions to a rival day press conferences from Dan Morgan, Dave Canales, select players, and then I'll be out there boots on the ground for Wednesday's practice, and again I'll be out there on Thursday. There's a walkthrough on Friday. I'll be out there on Saturday as well. So plenty of training camp access and trying to be out there as much as possible. And bear with me because unfortunately, basically having two full-time jobs, one working at MRN and NASCAR, one being here with Locked On Panthers. I am not able to attend everything Panthers-wise that I would like to. So there's going to be like Fan Fest. I'll miss that because I got to go to Iowa. And then one of the preseason games, the Houston game, I'll be in Richmond, so won't have instant reaction to that. But I plan on being out there. I got like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 of the 15 days. Plan on being out there. So I can't even go. I'm not going to be in Houston. So 8 of the 14 days, at least here in Carolina, will certainly be there. And any days I can't make it, I'm going to try to get on people who are on the beat, who are out there for that training camp practice, to give you guys the best coverage that I can, knowing that it's really difficult for you as the fan not to get the opportunity. It's one of the things that sucks about not being at Wofford anymore, that you don't get to see this team, that they kind of took away what was really a special thing that the fan base and the organization had. I know that dates back to the previous owner, Jerry Richardson, but I liked what Carolina was doing back then. And, there's nothing quite like that Spartanburg heat in late July and in early August. But soon enough, I guess next year, this is going to be the same case. And hopefully next year, job-wise, we'll see what happens. Well, I'm not going to say too much. But, we'll see where we go. But this year, be challenging your fans. I'm sure somebody's going to try and find a way to kind of poke their head in from Cedar Street if that's possible. But I would plan on being out there as much as possible for you all over the next couple of weeks. So really excited to get out there and to get back to training camp and covering this team, boots on the ground. And it'll be out there in a lot of things this year, game-wise. So you'll be seeing different coverage than you've seen over the last couple of years. Really trying to incorporate more guests on here like I did in the offseason. Makes it easy on you. Probably a better listen for you as well. So, yeah, that's what I got. That's going to wrap up this edition of the Locked On Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, hosted by yours truly, Julian Council. Again, subscribe or follow the show for free over on YouTube or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. Be sure to follow me, Julian Council, over on Twitter and Blue Sky at Julian Council, where no mailbag just yet, but at me or DM me to get questions in. Just I can answer them whenever. At me on Blue Sky as well, and get to them when I can. In the meantime, be safe, be happy, be whole as always and forever. Keep pounding and enjoy your weekend. And on Monday, we are back, baby. The rookies are reporting, and training camp is right around the corner.